Yo, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another critical Bitcoin update. In this video, we're going to discuss Bitcoin's price action once again and continue to discuss if we're still working in that same narrative from our last update where we can possibly see the mid to the upper 60K regions. But to quickly recap, we got to go all the way back and talk about how we even approach these levels. First of all, as you can see here, we identified what could have been a possible triangle in the making due to the extreme indecision between the bulls and the bears. We saw this price extreme for this wave B, and we could have identified at that point some kind of irregular flat or triangle in the making. And with that assumption in mind, we were actually one of the first to even identify the possibility where a lot of people were actually looking for lower levels. We were looking for higher levels at that point. That immediately put us in a range bound type scenario of either the triangle or some kind of expanded flight idea. But luckily we stuck with the triangle idea because volume was contracting anyways. So with that first assumption in mind at the time, as price started to develop, we started to see even further development in the price action that didn't really indicate any resolution of the expanded flat. Simply put, we didn't see any kind of impulse off the lows, so that put even more weight into the triangle idea, and we even were able to adjust the slope of the triangle for the C wave as we enter that lower spectrum of the targets, and that's what we did. And we were looking for lower levels for that D wave, and then we got that D and E wave, and now we're currently sitting at what could be the final completion of that A, B, C, D, E of that triangle, what could have been part of that X wave. So as you can see here, we're now looking for what could be a possible ABC as the final resolution, what is possibly setting us up for a larger, major bullish continuation to the upside. So in the shorter time frame, we were extremely bearish, ladies and gentlemen, and we were looking for how to trade this triangle for the past month or so, and it seems like we're at peak validation of what could be finally confirming this possible move to the downside going into that massive support zone. As people are starting to look for more bearish structural movements to the downside at these levels here, that's where I'm going to be collectively looking for what could be a major reversal zone to the upside. And in that case, we have to understand how this triangle is even developing. And as you can see, we can say that everything is now complete in terms of actually confirming how this triangle is going to be complete. As I don't even want to say that this D wave is in an extension, as this would be a WXY. You can't really have another WXY within a triangle. You can really only utilize one WXY. This was definitely more characteristic as a double correction here, and as you can see, we have an ABC going into that D wave, a leading expanding going into that wave A, B, and then a 5-way move into that C that completed our E wave, which was very close to that invalidation, and then we got a major rejection after we hit that 1-to-1 ratio. So we're now just kind of figuring out if this first confirmation is either it's going to hold as a resistance now, which looks like it is. We did a bounce off of that support and it's now turned into resistance at this point at the current time of recording. Now we need that major confirmation broken, and if we do, then we know for a fact 99.99% that we're gonna be continuing to the downside even further. But what if in the case that these are actually a protected low? There is that possibility because this can turn into a corrective move in itself, meaning that the only way we can see this as a bullish continuation is a possible WXY. That changes the whole structure, taking into account for minor market inefficiencies, saying that this was a WXY, WXYZ to the downside really doesn't matter. What's important is that this was a termination point for a wave 2. This is a bottom for a bullish structure. And we can alternatively say that this whole move up here where we originally said that this was WXY as a part of a triangle, we can really whole shift that structure and say that this is now working as a leading diagonal going into wave 1. This move here can now be part of a WXY if this is going to be this level is going to be holding. The most important level that needs to hold here is the 78.6 or the 88.6% level, which arguably is a very important level for the bulls to secure if this is seen as a wave 1-2. But it is very difficult to say that this scenario is going to be holding just due to the fact that we are now doing the aftermath of what has happened in the past week from the stock markets, where we also assumed a possible larger ABC pullback. I feel like this is now kind of the follow-up where we're seeing a larger move to the downside that may actually break this low here. But we're not out of the woods just yet for the bulls and the bears alike. we have to make sure that we break these major confirmation levels. As you see here, this level here at the 78.6 or the 76.6 rather has to break. And the only way we can do that is now part of an impulse wave. It's very difficult to count this range here, but however, the only way, real way we can count it is say that this is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's going to be eventually putting us into a wave A of that wave Y. And then we have the possibility of this being a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This turns into an intermediate degree. And then we say that this is now part of the minor degree, where we're now doing the internal structure of creating the broadest slope of this extended wave 3 of this primary here. These are very, very difficult to actually confirm in real-time analysis. However, this is the only way I can count it. And if we are actually able to do this, this whole structure that we've been talking about here is now absolutely 100% confirmed. And if that happens, ladies and gentlemen, I'll see you at 65, 60K possibly. If that doesn't happen, then we can finally talk about what could be a bullish alternative right now, because that 78.6 and 80.6% level, like I said, could be part of that WXY structure. So it's really up to you as a trader if you're going to be seeing this as a protected bottom or not. However, since we have been talking about this whole idea of this triangle for the past weeks, I think that this idea is just going to be a little bit more fitting and has a little bit more weight in terms of the overall probability. Because remember, the balance of probabilities is what keeps us afloat and removing all the emotional bias within the markets. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, if I had a gun pointed to my head right now, I say this all the time and every analysis basically is, I still have to stick with this idea of that this X wave is now complete and we're working for a larger ABC to the downside. It just fits a little bit better. In fact, I even mentioned it's just going to be a better thing for us, right? Because when everyone starts to turn bearish is when I'm going to turn extremely bearish, and we're going to be looking for a major 3 to the upside. And that's just how I see things. And I think that's when we're actually going to see a major reversal, a lot of late longs coming back into the markets. That's going to drive the liquidity back into the markets. I think right now is just kind of housework for the bears, and we're going to eventually move to the upside. So hopefully that was helpful. Thank you very much. I'll see you guys in the next video. Please make sure to hit that thumbs up button, like the video, like the post, comment below on what you're seeing, whatever it is. Good luck. Bye-bye.